let's move on to pricing. So one thing I remember like hearing from you talking to other people about is like, you're not charging enough, charge more.
Yeah.
And people are like, well, this is what people are willing to pay. But you're like, no, people are willing to pay more. Trust me, charge more.
Yeah.
So what's the rationale behind it, and how did you go about doing that?
Yeah. So,
but first, a word from our sponsor, Ahrefs. Do you wish you could get more traffic to your website? Half the battle of that is knowing what to fix on your website regarding SEO. You could always hire an SEO consulting firm to do that, but that could be expensive. I've always said, if you could do it in-house, understand SEO, understand what you need to fix, you could probably fix it better than most SEO companies because you know your business, you know your customers, you know your content better than anybody else. What if you get a free SEO audit from an amazing tool set? That is the power of Ahrefs Webmaster Tools. Ahrefs Webmaster Tools gives you the tools and the information you need to go ahead and see a list of things that you could fix on your site immediately. You'll see the keywords you're ranking for, understand how Google sees your content and your site, and discover how making changes to your website could actually blow up your traffic in Google search. So check out Ahrefs Webmaster Tools at ahrefs.com/webmaster-tools. And thanks again to Ahrefs for sponsoring.
So first of all, you really want to charge the right price. You don't want to charge the lowest price and you don't want to charge the highest price. You want to charge the right price. And figuring out what the right price is a bit of an art, I think. Meaning, obviously, you obviously need to charge enough money that you're earning. But I think that for a lot of people that might be watching or listening, you actually have a lot of business, and you charging too little is a bad thing because you're using up your resources. You're not available for bigger projects or for more lucrative projects because you've used it all on the smaller projects. I would say this: we start out like most companies do, working with smaller clients. What we found, every so often we would get a bigger client, and what we found with the bigger clients is they actually, so a smaller client might be a company that has less employees or is doing less online business. A big company might be a Fortune 500 company or Fortune 100 company. And the interesting thing is that it's not actually harder necessarily to do digital reputation management for a bigger company than it is for a smaller company. Because some of the ingredients that you need are readily available. If you're working with a big company, they have media coverage. Hopefully some of it is really positive too. They may be able to achieve a Wikipedia page much more easily.
Right.
If they need something, if you say to them, you do an analysis and you say, article in Bloomberg would really help you in your reputation, and they can get one because if they call Bloomberg, you're an interesting company and Bloomberg wants to talk to you. Whereas if smaller companies are working with less resources, so so on the one hand, they're paying you less, and there's less to work with, and this is more money for them.
Right.
Because their budgets may be smaller. So it's like, I'm not saying that you should work with smaller companies, but smaller companies, the other thing is that a large company, and I'm talking about multi-billion-dollar companies or publicly traded companies, if you do excellent work for them, then they probably want to continue working with you in some capacity for a long, long, long time.
Right.
And whereas a smaller company, they're kind of thinking about this. A lot of times they might be thinking about, they don't really have a budget for this. This is an emergency. This is a particular task oriented. So they've got 6 months of budget or 9 months or 12 months, but they're not necessarily going to renew. With some of the bigger companies, they'll renew for 10 years. Because they found a service provider who provides great service, who does good reporting, is very attentive to their needs. And I imagine that a lot of the people might be watching this. You care about your clients. You're doing a good job for them. Like when you do it for a smaller client, you're actually you're kind of shooting yourselves in the foot because you're putting a lot of big investment. Now, if they're growing, that's great. But if they're going to stay small, then they may never be able to cash in. So what do you do with pricing? So there's certain baseline pricing that I think you need to have. You need to kind of set rules for yourself. We're not going to do a PPC program unless we're making $3,000 a month or whatever it is, because I'm going to have a resource who's going to be looking at this every day. They're going to spend this amount of time. We never do hours at all ever.
I only do hours. I don't do fixed fees.
So I always do fixed fees. Never do hours.
Fixed fees were killing me. So you know.
Yeah. So
I'm in a different, because it's always spec. It's for I do software development. It's always
right. Because there's feature creep and then there's new issues. And
doing a change order is so political and so. It's just hourly. So
right. So I tell clients is that we are dedicating a resource. The price you're paying for is going to be the level of resource and the amount of time that we're putting into it, but not like down to the hour. It's meaning if you were a big company, I'm not going to give you an hour of resource today, but I'm also not going to commit to, because what you really want is you want me to solve your problem. You want me to give you the right. And most of our clients, they don't actually care whether you spent 2 hours on it or 20 hours on it.
Right.
And I don't even know at the beginning of a month, I don't know how many hours we're going to spend on you this month. I know that I've got to satisfy you. I know what the scope of work is. So a typical scope of work, there's we need a Wikipedia page written. There's a negative result that's hanging out at number 3 or number 4 for the chief executives or whatever. So we create a particular scope, and we need to move along. We create a timeline for when we think that's going to be, how we think we're going to progress through that, and then we meet that. The client really, if I say to them we did 30 hours, they're really not interested. They want to know that we made progress.
Right.
So with our reputation management, initially our baseline was kind of like we don't do anything for less than $7,000 a month. And then a client would come in and they'd be like, all right, well, our budget's 4. I'm like, 4 is good too. Because you're in a small, and I don't think that's wrong to do. You're a smaller company, and that's profitable. You should do it. As you grow and as you realize that you're selling yourself short and the value is really much more than that, then I think you need to set your baseline higher. And the other thing is, like, a client thinks that they want the lowest price, but they don't really want the lowest price. A client also they want the price that gives them the level of importance or primacy within your clients. You don't really want to be the client who the account manager looks at last every day.
Right.
So I have to say this to my wife sometimes when she has a service provider, someone's like working on something in our house. She's like, I want the lowest price on this, and I'm like, you really don't want the lowest price. What you want is the appropriate price, like a price where this person feels like they've got a good deal, and you feel like you've got a good deal. Now, as you move up the food chain and you're working with bigger companies, they're used to paying. I mean, you need to think about what are they paying other service providers that are not as attentive and not as valuable as you. So if they're paying, their PR firm, a big corporation might be paying their PR firm $30,000 a month or $50,000 a month. You can't come in as the reputation management company unless you're in a crisis. Doesn't usually make sense to come in at that price point because it's a bit high. They probably were thinking this was going to be something that was included in PR, and now they found out it's a separate thing. So it can't be bigger than PR typically.
Interesting.
So kind of like thinking in terms of anchoring. You think about, like, where are they anchored? What do they think that an attentive group of people working on their behalf to do something really important is worth?
Right.
And so for us, that's turned into something like for an individual, it's like $10,000 to $15,000 a month. 9 to 12 months in a kind of a crisis or an intense situation. And for a corporation, it would be $20,000 to $30,000 a month. Those are very rough kind of figures, but that's the anchoring. So when they ask, the clients will often ask, well, give me a sense of what this costs. You anchor them around those, and you say to them, which is true, like, obviously the scope matters. If you tell me that I want to monitor my corporation in French and German and Spanish, and so that's going to be very different. And if there's issues in these different places, obviously, so it's like in the end they're buying a team who's giving them attention and helping them progress through this. So the right price point is going to be the price point that matches the value. Obviously, it's got to be profitable for us, but it matches the value-wise in terms of what they're receiving as well.
But the team that's paying 30 versus the team that's paying, the company that's paying 30 versus the company that's paying like 5.
Oh yeah,
there's more resources on the 30.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. I don't know that it's 6 times as much resources, but certainly it's a whole different level. And the other thing is that you're going to fight your big clients. You're going. I mean, it's just the nature of the beast. They're going to be the first thing when you look at in the morning. You're going to give them absolute attention. They call you in the middle of the night. You're answering the phone. You're going to be on the.
Your big clients, they're usually the ones that are asking for the least in general.
Right. So what's interesting is it oscillates. I think, like, talk about, like, so we work with a very large investment bank, and there will be, the main thing we do for them is monitor closely, tell them about new opportunities, help them solve problems. On a day-to-day basis, they are not as necessarily as demanding as a $20,000 a month client, but there'll be a few times a year when something hits the fan, and then it's all hands on deck, and they get that immediately. So it's like it's kind of, we've normalized the price, but the level of attention they get during that, call it 1 or 2 months a year, is justifies the rest of it, because they'd actually pay anything to have someone solve this problem, this vandalism that just happened on the Wikipedia page, or this image of the CEO is suddenly like got horns on him or something, or some crazy thing that that will happen inevitably. And another thing that tends to happen is also it's like people don't know what they don't know either. So we actually get a lot of value, or give a lot of value to our clients from monitoring things that they didn't even know. So we actually created monitoring tools. We have a Wiki Alerts tool.
I get it.
You get the Wiki Alerts. So recommend if anybody who cares about Wikipedia, Wiki Alerts is a tool that's free. It actually gives you a better version of like pop-ups or kind of notifications when something has changed on a Wikipedia page. It doesn't give you this gobbledygook that Wikipedia gives. It actually gives you track changes. And it'll also tell you if there's been a burst of traffic to a particular page. It'll say like, hey, traffic's up 300%. To this page. So it's you can get the alerts. You can just go to the app. We built it because we needed it for our own work, and then our clients were like, "This is really cool," and so we made it into a product.
Cool. One question: you mentioned like you have clients that renew for 10 years, meaning they renew
year after year. Yeah,
but they don't sign up at 10 years.
No, they don't sign 10 years. That would be nice. But yeah, the other thing that we do is, and this is probably a mistake, but we rarely go back. If a client's paying a reasonable retainer, we don't, even after 5 years, we don't usually raise the retainer. We're thinking very long game. Like and we actually lower retainers also. If a client is paying too much, then we'll lower their retainer. Meaning, if we look at the client, we've had clients.
But you won't raise it.
We don't usually raise it unless it's like unless it's obvious that there's a big difference. Like if we're just making a little less profit on them because the costs have gone up and our salaries have gone up.
It's unusual. I'm saying.
Yeah,
it's very unusual.
Because my feeling is I don't like to be nickel and dimed, and I'm like, if I'm paying good money, even like
for 5 years, I mean.
Even after 5 years, I'll tell you what, because we're thinking, because a big client who pays us for a long time, they're kind of like paying us an infinite amount of months. And so an infinite amount of months is a lot of money. Like as long as, these are only in the situation where you're earning, this is a good retain. The client maybe would pay more, but what I'm thinking is, you know what, wait till they come along and they say, hey, we've got another sub project. Let's wait for that opportunity. I just think that you got to think long game.
I agree. I mean, I only changed my company rates, hourly rates once. And we've been in business since, in the past, I changed it probably several years ago.
Wow.
I haven't increased it. I've been told
which you could definitely. I mean,
I could.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I feel like we charge a lot now, and I think if it was unprofitable, sure. But we're okay, and I want to try to offer them a good rate. So I totally agree with that.
I'm thinking of the long-term value of the client, and like the long-term value, we probably could charge $1,000 more a month to some of the clients, and they probably wouldn't necessarily blink. But I'm thinking like it's I'd rather not like. I don't want the relationship to be about the retainer. I don't like discussing the retainer. Like that's the thing. Now let's give you all the service and everything you want. Like the money, it's kind of like don't talk to me about the bill. Just that that's taken care of. And then when it comes time to add something new, if it's small, and we can work it into the same resources. That's good. And when it comes bigger, it's much easier to say, hey, now you've added France as a location. There's some more work to do there. We'd like to suggest that we raise the retainer by $5,000 as an incremental thing. The chances that they're going to agree to that are very high because you don't raise your rates. So you just kind of wait for when it's time to increment that. So I don't know. I feel like
I know every year in January my lawyer sends an email. My rates are going up. I expect it.
Right.
It's kind of annoying, but
not
that I use it much, but I understand. So.